It would seem that South by Southwest has the same hypnotic qualities as the Pet Sematary, as this latest adaptation of Stephen King's classic novel came out of the festival with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, even though it clearly stinks like a dead animal. And sure enough, in the last week or so, as other critics outside of South by Southwest have gotten a look at the film, well, let's just say that Pet Sematary Tomato is starting to look more and more like the resurrected church. The main problem with the movie, well, actually, it has a lot of problems. It has some good stuff, too, which we'll discuss. But, the big problem is that the movie completely falls apart in the third act. I don't know, actually, if that's the big problem. It's like the movie just can't keep it up anymore. It's like it just throws its hands up in the air and it's like, yeah, this sucks. Or it just gives up. I can't tell if it gives up or if it runs out of steam, but maybe it's a mix of the two. Because first it becomes silly in the third act, like you start to laugh at it, and not like in an intentional way. And then it ends on a really distasteful note. Like they don't actually show it, but they heavily telegraph what's about to happen. And I just think it's a really bad idea. And I'm surprised that didn't occur to anyone associated with the film. Like, we should just end it like a couple of seconds earlier, and maybe that'll help us. Maybe not totally, go down in flames. And I think at least a test audience would have brought this up. Maybe the film wasn't put before a test audience, but that would be a mistake. Hollywood. It's up to the producers. The producers in the studio if they want to test the movie. I'm sure some of you. I know there are a lot of cinephiles out there who are absolutely horrified, more horrifying than anything that Stephen King could come up with, to put your work in front of a bunch of moviegoers and ask for feedback, right? How dare they interfere with your art? But as I like to remind you, the difference between fine art and, the cinematic art, well, even with movies, there's a difference. It depends on how big of an audience you want. So with fine art, you have to convince just one person to pay a couple $1 million for your piece, and bam, you're a success. One person. With an awards film, you just have to get critics to get behind it, right? But the new Pet Sematary is not an awards film, and only critics at South by Southwest were behind it, as I just pointed out. But this is a commercial film, so it needs to sell a lot of tickets. And I think a lot of people are going to have a really bad response to this ending. I sure did. I think the word of mouth on this film is going to be horrible. And I'm curious to see what its cinema score is, because audiences will be asked to grade the film right after they see that horrible ending. Now, the first 2/3 of the film, as I said, are actually pretty good. So good, in fact, that I was actually enjoying Jason Clarke's performance. High praise indeed! All the acting is strong, from industry veteran John Lithgow to Amy Seimetz as Clarke's haunted wife, to the cat, who I sometimes even thought was a puppet. And either it was a puppet or the cat, or cats in this case, as Church was played by a group of cats. They are truly amazing animal actors. But a special shout out has to go to Jete Laurence as their daughter, who does a surprisingly good job going from sweet, innocent, and alive to the exact opposite. There's a few scenes with her dad right after she comes back, which are the best scenes in the film, and show a glimmer of what this movie could have been. So since the acting is so good and the directing is also really strong, really good visual choices from Kevin Kolch and Dennis Widmeyer. And they're surprisingly cinematic choices, considering their biggest credit to date is the Scream TV series on MTV, which no one's even really talking about. It's not like they came from some, HBO or Netflix show where everyone's like, so cinematic. It's like Scream TV. Oh yeah, they made a Scream TV show on MTV. Is MTV still around? Stuff like that. So I think they're good directors. I mean, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that since this is one of it's their first commercial film, that maybe they didn't have a say in how bad the script was. And on that note, that leaves the writer, Jeff Bueller, as the one who dropped the ball, and the producers for not realizing it and making him fix it, or hiring another writer to do so. Watching this movie, it's hard to believe that Stephen King's original story was a full-blown novel and not just a short story, because not only have a bunch of story beats been stripped away, but character beats as well. And as a result, characters come across as acting unusually stupid or naive. As I've also said, people have to act stupidly in a horror movie or else there'd be no horror movie, right? But here you're like, you gotta explain it a little little bit because this just seems ridiculous. And some elements, like the mother's flashbacks to her childhood, seem, I mean, I'm sure they were like, oh, we kept it, oh, we're so good, we're being faithful to the source material, even though clearly they've changed so much from the source material. But it just, with the mother's flashbacks, they just seemed like an excuse for extra scares rather than something that actually contributes to the story in a meaningful way. And they don't even provide much of a backstory for the Pet Sematary. I mean, you've seen most of it in the trailers. Those weird kids in the woods, they didn't do anything with that. I mean, talk about lazy writing. To be fair, though, at this point, I think everyone realizes that Stephen King is a really good idea man whose work needs to be plussed when it's adapted for a wider audience. I've never read a Stephen King novel, but he must be really good with his prose as well to really pull the audience in. But, his work's flawed, as we've seen. And, I think that in some cases, filmmakers have elevated his work quite well, which has added to King's legacy. Giving him great, because his name's still associated with the adaptation that's better than what he originally did. But here, the filmmakers have actually made Stephen King's work worse. I think a straight adaptation, flaws and all, would have been better than what we actually got with this 2019 adaptation. And again, that ending, wow. I think it shows that even in 2019, you can still go too far, especially when it's done so cheaply, not earned by the film whatsoever. So that's my review of Pet Sematary. Maybe worth a rental if you're really into horror, but it just was left such a bad taste in my mouth. I really had a problem with it. So share your own thoughts down below. I'm not doing a spoiler review, so you can do spoiler comments here, but just be sure to mark them so you don't ruin the experience for anyone else. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.